Welcome to Nurses with Voices, the podcast where we amplify the voices of nurses everywhere. I'm your host, Dr. Lindra James, DNP RN, and I am thrilled to go on this podcast journey with you. Through this podcast, we aim to educate, empower, and inspire nurses at every stage of their careers. Whether you're a novice nurse navigating the challenges of bedside care, an experienced clinician looking to advance in your field, or dreaming of becoming a nurse entrepreneur, Nurses with Voices is here for you. Together, we'll explore the triumphs, struggles, and countless opportunities that come with being a nurse. So tune in, subscribe, and let your voice be heard, because here at Nurses with Voices, every nurse has a story worth sharing, and every nurse voice deserves to be amplified. Welcome back to another episode of Nurses with Voices. I'm your host, Dr. Lindra James, DNP RN. And today I'm thrilled to introduce our distinguished guest, Dr. Katie Boston Leary, a formidable force in the world of nursing as a nurse executive, a nationally recognized speaker, a thought leader. She has truly dedicated her career to nursing, to the nursing profession. She currently serves as the Senior Director of Nursing Programs at the American Nursing Association, where she plays a pivotal role in shaping the future of nursing. And in addition to her extensive professional achievements, Dr. Katie is passionate about diversity, equity, inclusion, which is something that you all know that I'm very passionate about as well. She co-chairs the DEI committee and serves on the board for Healthcare Leadership Network of Delaware Valley. Recently, she participated in a groundbreaking documentary, Everybody's Work, it really exploring the pervasive issues of racism in nursing and really shedding light, I want to say, on the challenges and driving conversation for change. She was recently inducted in the Academy of Diversity Leaders in Nursing, and, it will be a distinguished fellow, right? It's just awesome. I mean, I can go on and on and on about Dr. Katie. And, and she was also awarded the Healthcare Innovation Award. I mean, Dr. Katie, your expertise and dedication to creating a more inclusive and equitable healthcare environment, it really makes you an invaluable voice in our ongoing dialogue about the future of nursing. So please, everyone, please join me in welcoming Dr. Katie Boston Leary to Nurses with Voices. So
Hey, thank you for having me. What an introduction. And sorry I had to read that, but just the energy you put into that actually gave me energy. So thank you. That's really amazing.
Absolutely. I'm so happy you're here. And I definitely have some questions for you. I know there's some things that the listeners want to know. You're definitely an inspiration to nursing, a thought leader. And I want to talk a little bit about that today.
So let's do it, Dr. Lindra. Let's do it.
Let's do it. So share with us, what inspired you to pursue a career in nursing and what has driven your passion for leadership within the profession?
Oh, great question. So I always tell this story. I didn't have aspirations to become a nurse. So I don't have the sob stories that I usually hear that's so heartfelt in terms of how people enter the profession. I didn't have any nurse role models in my family or within groups of people that I knew. So I really finished high school. I thought that I was going to be an accountant like my dad, and I decided to take a gap year after high school. And my parents saw that as a year of me wasting away. And I got a lot of pressure at the time, but I wanted to work and make a little bit of money before I went to school. And so I was working at a nursing home because a cousin of mine that was roommate decided that she wanted to pursue healthcare. So I went with her to give her a ride because I had the car in the house. And then they gave us both applications, and I filled out one for the fun of it, and we were hired on the spot. So took the job as nursing assistant. So took the job, and while I was working there, I think At my 10th month or so, there was a gentleman who I consider to be God sent, approached me in the lounge and said that the county was offering scholarships for people to go to school. They'll cover everything, including your parking and your books. And I was foolish, and I said, "This is not a good time." And he pulled me up by my scrub top and dared me and threatened me almost to not come back to work the next day without the information from the college. Embarrassed, I went home that day, and I was going to confront him the following day, but then I thought about it and I said, "Well, I'm going to look like a fool if I don't show up with something." And I was working 3 to 11:30 p.m. shift, and at the last minute, I decided to go, and I was running late for work. So I was on campus. I was feeling the energy. It was feeling like, okay, maybe I should do something now. And then I was running late, and I went to the short line, and the short line that I ended up on was the line for the RN program. And the rest is history. I've regretted it since. I just kept pursuing it, looking into it. It went full force into it, finished the program. And I think that was a turning point in not only my career, but also in my life. I really do believe that nursing has not only provided me a lot of benefits as a human being, and also socioeconomically in terms of sustainability, but it's also, I think, saved my life to be in this profession.
Wow, it's powerful when you say it saved your life. I know, nursing is definitely a career that a lot of people choose, and these days, I don't know if people are choosing the career for the right reasons. And when you have, nurses with longevity like yourself, it is life changing. It truly, truly, truly is, and you can make such a difference, and you've proven that. With your track record of everything, you've done in nursing. And, when we talk about your role, right, at the American Nurses Association, which involves overseeing nursing programs, can you tell us some of the key initiatives that you're currently leading and the impact that they're having on the nursing community?
So I'll start with how we manage our work, because our division is a nursing practice and work environment division. And there's another arm that a counterpart of mine has oversight of, which is our ethics advisory board work, where we develop the code of ethics. And we focus on issues that are managed and directed by our highest governing body, which is ANA Membership Assembly, which includes the state nurse affiliates, delegates, and leaders from across the country. So our focus right now is has been on staffing, has been on workplace violence. And I say has been because this is not new work. It just keeps carrying forward, and we advance it every year. Safe patient handling. We publish books on standards and scopes of practice in specialties, and also in nursing and nursing leadership. I also oversee Healthy Nurse, Healthy Nation, where we focus on the health and well-being of nurses. And it's a free program for nurses and non-nurses to partake in. We also focus on climate change, AI, virtual nursing, all the things that tend to impact racism in nursing, all the things that tend to impact us as nurses, as individuals, and within the systems that we take on. Sometimes our work is also driven by what's happening in the environment. So, for example, during the pandemic, with everything that happened, then our work and attention had to shift, and there was a full throttle focus on what we can do to help nurses and nursing manage a very challenging time. And we got into a space of even publishing information and engaging in grants focused on clinical practice. We usually leave that to the specialty organizations to do, but because that had such a broad impact on nursing overall, we went there. So we take on things that are happening in the environment as well, not just has to be pandemic related, but also things that tend to grab the eyes and attention of nurses. With the case with the criminalization of clinical errors, that case that happened a couple of years ago, we took that on. So things like that. And we pay attention. We do surveillance all the time to find out what is impacting nurses and the nursing profession to make sure that we're staying attuned. And we try to be very adept and agile to find out what's happening so we can figure out how we can contribute to it, manage it, support it, provide more information on it, and even in some cases elevate it when needed to, particularly with the eyes of the folks that have the power and the influence, particularly on Capitol Hill.
We talk about staffing. I know there's been, across the country, organizations are, they have potential strikes, and staffing has staffing has been a long time, considerable issue in healthcare. And what is some things that you, the ANA, may be familiar with what's happening right now in Capitol Hill as far as staffing and nursing organizations really advocating for healthcare for nurses in particular?
Yeah, so there are a number of things happening, and there are things that we have a government affairs team that does a really good job of advocating for different bills. We support different bills. We elevate concerns with certain things bills that are introduced that may be detrimental to the profession and to nurses individually. Right now, we're paying attention to the Schakowsky bill, which is also addressing the issue of ratios. We are paying attention to, we have the ICANN Act that we're also paying attention to, which is about full practice authority and for nurses to be able to, perform at their fullest. So workplace violence is another bill that we're pushing for there to be some attention on the Hill that's gone. And we know that, with the upcoming elections, not much is happening now until the elections take place this year. So there are a number of things we're also paying attention to. A lot of what's happening with the anti-DEI efforts that are going on and how it could impact the profession. So we're looking into how we can have an impact there to do something proactively, particularly at the state level, because that's where a lot of the activity is. And then overall Title VIII funding, which is really about funding that comes from at the federal level to support the profession. We always push for additional funds to fill that bucket to help with what we can do in terms of the pipeline and the retention of nurses and the advancement as well.
I love it. Well, you were recently part of a documentary, Everybody's Work, right? Yes. Focusing on diversifying nursing, I should say. What are some of the most striking revelations from this documentary, and how do you believe they will influence efforts to combat, racism or discrimination in healthcare?
Yeah. So first of all, I would like to say that was a life-changing experience.
I'm sure.
There are a number of things that you're asked to do, and you're dubious about what the end product will be, but you're hopeful as well. And then when you finally hear it's done, you're cringing like, oh, my name's on it. I hope it's going to be good, right? And then we go to the premiere, and it's this wonderful, amazing product, like well beyond what I could have anticipated or expected. The quality of it, the way they wove together all the stories to in a way that it would not only appeal to nurses but to the general public, right? I remember sitting I was sitting to the side because we had to do a panel right away. And I can see the staff at the theater all stopped and were watching the film as well, right? So what intrigued me, the first thing that intrigued me about this that was eye-opening was the title. I didn't know what the title was going to be until they started promoting it. And then I was trying to make sense of it, like Everybody's Work. But then once you watch the film, you really realize that they're really saying that for us to address a lot of the issues that we're having with racism in nursing and the lack of diversity and all the harms that are happening because of this place that we're in, that is wedded in our core history as a nation, it requires everybody. It's not just a cross for nurses of color to carry. It's something that everybody should carry, right? No matter who you are, what you do, what your background is, where you come from, it's for everybody. Because when you think about the greater good and what we're trying to achieve here, it really does take all of us, not to mention all the successful social movements that have happened. The ones that were successful happened because everybody took part in it, right? Starting with the civil rights era. So it's along those lines. So that was a one profound thing for me. It was during the movie that it hit me that that's why it's called everybody's work, because you get it when you're watching the film. But it's validating for a lot of people like us in terms of what we've experienced, where there's a release that you have watching this film where you go, I wasn't the problem. Now, the system is a problem. It puts the blame where it's supposed to be, but it still requires us to fix it. And it also instills some hope that there are things that are in place that are happening that would move the dial in the right direction. And you hope, of course, that we'll all be here to reap the benefits and see all these changes come to pass and the impact that it could have. But if nothing else, it sets us up nicely for who may come after us to pick up the torch and keep it going. So that was a beautiful thing about the film. And it's one of those films also where, because I have a number of movies that I love where I don't mind watching it over and over again. This is one of those films.
So if I understand correctly, everybody's work there's an option for it to be featured in different cities. Is that right? There's a way for, if you're interested, you can sign up and have this film featured in your community?
Yes. You can go to shiftnursing.com, I believe. I can verify that. And once you go on the site, you can click and request for a showing. And you can do a showing in your institution, for your department. You can do it for your community and host a showing at a local movie theater or just general place of gathering. There are a number of different ways you can host a showing, and there's no charge because this was a part of a grant. And there are a couple conditions, but the main one is that you're not supposed to charge either. The most important thing is for it to get out, for everyone to partake and share their experiences of the film.
So, and that leads me actually to the discussion around DEI, right? And, your role as a board member. And, I guess, what are some strategies do you find to be most effective in promoting diversity, equity, and inclusion within healthcare organizations? I know everybody's work is a great documentary, but when we bring it to within healthcare organizations, like, what do you think are some strategies that you find to be effective?
Yeah, I think it really starts with understanding the why behind why you're entering this work. There's a great book called The Necessary Journey by Ella Washington, where she talks about how many companies should move beyond doing DEI because it's cool, or doing it because you have to, because of a regulatory requirement, or maybe there's a direction from the board and you're doing it because you have to. The focus should be that you should want to, because of what it means overall. And what we need to move past, particularly during this time where there's been so much pushback on this politically, on this work, is to understand that this is not a zero-sum game. It is really about us revisiting who we are as human beings and how we should want the same for everybody that we would want for ourselves and the ones that we love. Whereas if you meet a certain group where they are, it doesn't mean that you're taking anything away from anybody else. So Ella Washington's book talks about how organizations should move past the compliance stage of implementing DEI and should be at the fifth and sixth stage, which is more about the integration and sustainability around DEI, where it should show up everywhere. It's not somebody else's project. It should be embedded in everything that we do, who we are, what we focus on, our strategies, our priorities, our strategic plans, how we fill the seats, particularly where there's more of the power and influence in institutions, where there is a dedicated and intentional effort for there to be equity in terms of everyone feeling heard and being at the table. So I do think that the disruption that's needed in this space is to recognize and have some full awareness as where you are, not only as a person, but also as an institution, do a full assessment, and then work to move past the stage of compliance and doing it because you have to doing it because we need to. And the fact that we need to because we all are human beings and we are inherently good and we want what's good for everybody. We did an article in Nursing Administration Quarterly about how we can, if you looked at DEI in the structure of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, how it would change everyone's thinking about this, where it's not about focusing on one group and leaving another behind. And when you apply Maslow's hierarchy of needs, where at the base it's that belief about equality, where we all believe everyone deserves the same, and then you build on top of that diversity and equity, diversity and inclusion, where you bring the people. And then on top of that, there's love and belonging, which also lines up with Maslow's at the third level. And then on top of that, it's that security piece where there's dignity and respect and feeling like you matter. And then at the tippy top of that pyramid is self-actualization, where we all engage in human flourishing. You look at that and you look at it that way. It's really not about different groups. It's what we should want for everybody and what we should want for ourselves. If you look at the quote from Miriam Anderson, she talks about a nation is no bigger than its weakest people, because even if you're soaring, there's a part of you that's holding another group down. So even though you think you may be at your utmost best, you may not be, because another group is down here. And it is going to have an impact. It's going to come to your doorstep, ultimately. I'm paraphrasing. So there's all these pieces around it. This needs to be well understood and appreciated, versus seeing it as taking away from one group and giving to another, or giving something to a group that doesn't deserve it. We have to do away with that thinking.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And, the nursing profession is facing, numerous challenges, from workforce shortages, like we mentioned before, to systemic inequalities. And for nurses who are experiencing discrimination or bias in their workplace, what advice would you give them on how to just navigate these challenges and advocate, for themselves and for their peers?
Yeah, that's a tough one, because every institution is different. Some are more advanced than others. Some are nowhere near where they need to be. And you may find yourself in a place where you're probably the only voice, even if there are people in the institution that look like you. There are people that may look like you that may bow out of this type of effort. They may say, hey, I'm just here to do my job and collect my check. I'm not here to do any social movement. You're on your own, brother or sister. And then you go, what? So, and in some cases, you might find people that look like you that might work against you when it comes to this type of stuff. So it's important to do an initial assessment of where you are. That's the first thing. Like if you encounter some racist attitudes or acts against you and things like that, even well before that happens to you, you want to see and understand where your support is. And your support doesn't necessarily just come from people that look like you. There are allies all around you that you should also find that don't look like you, because they're people that can help you take your cause up. Again, everybody's work that can help you advance and address a lot of the issues that you face. So that assessment is very important. We kind of do that informally anyway when we get to a place to see. I remember every new job that I've had, I will go, okay, where are the other Black people? And then, and then you want to know, where do they stand? Because we've all seen it go either way, right? You can't assume it's kind of like that skin folk, kinfolk adage, right? Old adage where just because someone looks like you and have the color of your skin doesn't mean that they're aligned with your cause. So that is number one. The second thing is once you line up your allies, you want to always make sure that you think about how you challenge systems and challenge people, because sometimes things will come your way from people of power. It could be the patient that you're caring for where it might be excused because they're sick. You can't hold them accountable for what they say. So you have to think about where it's coming from and how you address it. The key things that I remember, Love You, Jai Jones, who's a New York Times bestselling author and TED Talk talker or speaker. She had, I remember one of her talks she did was about how you speak truth to power, right? You have to think about three things and three gates to go through before you utter anything or do anything. One, do you believe it? Two, can you defend it? Three, can you say it with love? Just because you come at me with hate doesn't mean that I have to give hate back. I can still set you straight with love. I still can. And it's an art, right? Because you have to manage your emotions when you're going through these things. So your immediate response, it would be to give it back. But you have to think about how in some cases, in most cases, that's not particularly helpful because, it's kind of, you're going to also be brushed in a certain way, similar to the person that did something against you. So being strategic about it is important, right? And make sure you add that love piece. Okay, let's talk about what you just said, because I'm here to help you, right? And then you go through your thing that you're going to say, and then you close it out with, now, was that helpful to you today? And how would that support you in the future if you feel that you have to utter such words to me? Right?
Love it. Right.
So we have to think about it. We have to be strategic because, especially now, people think that, being openly racist is cool. And there was a time that people would have those beliefs, and there was a joke about the little R and the big R. Now there's all the big R's that we're seeing. So since we're dealing with a lot of big R's, we have to be strategic, right? And a lot of racist acts also shows up insidiously, right? People would try to gnaw at you and hope that you're not going to notice that they're burning a hole in your back and you're not going to feel it. So you have to make sure that you're strategic and saying, just so you know, I saw what you did back there.
Right.
Right. I just need you to know that I saw that. So you have to be strategic. You have to make sure you have cool heads, warm hearts, and deal with these situations. And then they won't know what to do with you.
And that's key. I think that's key when you say they don't know what to do. And it's like that old saying, you kill them with kindness. And, and I think professionally, we talk about it as emotional intelligence, right? Mm-hmm. So having that emotional intelligence, and to your point, and using your language, being strategic on how you address them. Because when you address someone's situation professionally and with a smile, they don't know how to respond.
Well, they don't. You pull the chair up right from under them, right? So,
absolutely.
And it's important to know, also recognize you don't fight every single battle.
Yeah, you have to pick and choose.
It will be exhausting. Mm-hmm. Doesn't mean that you a failure, right? And you're doing an injustice by not addressing things, because I was watching this talk the other day about how as people of color, we're super saturated in our brains and our bones because of what we encounter all the time. So you have that you're dealing with, not to mention the fight itself is also work. There's a capacity issue. So you can't deal with everything. There's some things you're going to have to let go. But remember this, I always think about whenever I'm in a challenging situation, there's the war, and then there's a series of battles within the war. There's certain battles that I'm not going to fight. There's certain battles that I'm not going to win. But there are some that I will. But I'm still keeping my mind on the fact that there's a war that culminates all of this, that I know, because I'm doing something good, we will prevail. And I focus on the war.
There you go. I love that. I love how you said that, focusing on the war. And that's something that, I teach in my mentorship program for novice nurses and novice nurse leaders. You can't take on every battle. And you really have to your point, focus on the bigger picture, right? When you talk about the war as opposed to the battles, because if you don't, you'll burn yourself out, right?
Absolutely.
When we talk about you'll burn yourself out trying to fight every battle, you just can't.
Absolutely.
You just
And
can't.
there's some we have to preserve. We have to come home and give love and receive love, right? If you empty out completely, you get home ultimately to people that love you. You have nothing left for them consistently. Not a good thing, right? Because after all, we're human beings too. So you want to remember that it's not over. You don't have to take on everything. There's always tomorrow. There's always next week. And remember also, there are other people that should be fighting with you too. It's not solely yours to fight.
Right. Well, and when we talk about, winning, and I want to shift gears a little bit and talk a little bit about your achievements and your awards and, the induction, right, in particular. And what does this induction mean to you and the induction into the Academy of Diversity Leaders and Nursing? I had to write it down because it's like, I want to make sure I get this right. So what does this mean to you to be a distinguished fellow? And what does it mean for the nursing community?
Yeah, well, it means a lot. But let me start with the fact that I appreciate every single award that I get. I'm grateful. My family is as well. You know how mothers are like, why did there be another award? So I do appreciate every single award that I get. At the same time, I've learned over time, and particularly recently, because as much as you see the awards that I get, there's some recognitions and awards that you apply to that you don't get. And when those things happen, those letdowns happen, it's a gut check to remember what's important. The internal validation is what I sit on. The external stuff is icing on the cake, and it helps build my credentials to be in spaces like this. But it doesn't make me me. There's this internal joy that I seek in terms of what I do, the difference I'm making. I've even come to the realization that, and these are all very recent, by the way, realizations that my success is not purely horizontal. I can also have an impact and have success in a way that's touching more people, right? Versus getting higher roles and ascending my career ladder. All things are good. Whenever those opportunities come, if they sound right, seem right, timing's right, I'll take it. But I have really come to the realization that for me to have the peace of mind that I need to have in this space, and the work that I do, for me, it's more about the internal validation where I rest on the fact that I leave it all on the dance floor. Whenever someone wants to talk to me about a career change or anything that's happening in their lives professionally, the cold calls, if I can take them, and most of the time I say yes, I do. The reach that I have on platforms like this to impact people, nurses of color, that's a win. The policy work that I'm able to do to set things right in a world that's so topsy-turvy, that's a win. Like there's so many intangibles that are notches on my belt. These other things, as good as they are, I'm realizing that that's more secondary than primary for me.
Oh, I love that. I love that. Well, as we end and wrap up today's episode, I just want to know, is there anything that you'd like to share with, just the nursing community about your work or any thought-provoking commentary that you'd like to give, I should say, and provide to the nursing community?
Well, I'll talk about advocacy because I think this is one piece where we're lacking, where we need more focus and effort and energy, and for nurses to not bow out, particularly nurses of color. Where there's a lot that's happening in this world. There used to be a membrane, somewhat in some respects, between healthcare and politics in terms of science, if you will, and the sources of science and the belief in science and the grace that it's an evolution and certain things would change. Now, with what we're seeing, there's a denial and an upending of what's true and right, and there's a lack of trust in institutions. So because of all the negative sentiment that's out there around science and DEI, even climate change, look at where we are. I think now more than ever is a time for nurses to awaken their spirits of advocacy and step into these spaces, not only at the ballot box when election time comes with general elections, but even local elections, right? And look at how some of those policies can impact your community. I always say, if you want to know what's happening in the community, go to the emergency departments in that community. It all shows up there eventually, every single issue. So you have to make sure that we understand that all roads lead to healthcare. When people are not living well, when they're not eating well, when they don't have a job, right? All these, when there's redlining, all those pieces impact us because they show up where we work. If not in hospitals, in clinics, in private practice, in ambulatory care, they show up. So we have to realize that this advocacy space is ours. Nursing was built. Our DNA has advocacy. The A in our DNA is advocacy in nursing. We need to own that. We need to step into that. We need more nurses in office, and we really need to make sure that we proudly step into that space because we're needed there. There are over 5 million nurses in this country, and we have to make sure that we are looking at these policies, looking at these politicians, looking at how we can impact policy as nurses to make sure that we set the world right and turn it down the right direction for us to be in a better place.
Well, I can't have to say your insights are incredibly valuable. And, I'm excited for our listeners to, learn from you, from your vast experience and, just your unwavering commitment to making a difference in nursing. So I just really want to thank you for joining us today. And like I said, the introduction of you today spoke volumes, right? So I thank you, and I'm sure our listeners they're enjoying everything that you're saying. And I want to thank you so much for coming on today. So until next time, everyone, stay educated, stay empowered, and stay inspired. And we'll see you in the next episode.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.